My name is Alistair Mackie. I'm one of the principal trumpets in the Philharmonia Orchestra. I've always loved the trumpet, and to play it in a symphony orchestra is a tremendously exciting thing to do. Composers often use you at the biggest moments of the piece, the most exciting moments they give to the trumpet, and you sit there high above the orchestra and your sound can ride across the wonderful sound that's created by your colleagues around you. It seems strange to me that all this sound is generated just from vibrating your lips. It's not a very interesting sound, that. It's not a very noble sound. And yet the trumpet gives you a completely different voice. It takes that vibration, it takes that slightly ugly sound and makes it into something that I think very noble, very beautiful. Any musical instrument depends on vibration. If you're a string player, you vibrate the string, which in turn vibrates the air and sends the sound out into the room. If you're a trumpet player, you vibrate the air inside of your instrument, and you do that by vibrating your lips, like this. The next stage is to get a mouthpiece. And what happens now is this. The trumpet itself, in some ways, really just amplifies what is happening there. This is a C trumpet. Different trumpets sound slightly different. They amplify that basic vibration in different ways. But the pitch of the trumpet is fundamentally changed by this tension in the lips, which creates a higher or a lower vibration. Now what the valves do is this is a trumpet in the key of C. And if you can imagine the air travels through here and then comes straight out the bell. If you use a valve, what you're in effect doing is adding on a piece of tubing. So the valve acts a little bit like a junction, a railway junction, where the air is diverted through an extra tube. And as you can see, the smallest tube is on the second valve here, and that will lower the pitch by a semitone. The first valve has this tube here, which lowers the pitch by a whole tone. And the third valve, has the longest piece of tubing, and this tubing here lowers the pitch by a minor third. And it's by using combinations of valve that you can get the full chromatic range. Although vowels were a great invention because they allowed the trumpet player to play chromatically, to play every note across the range of the instrument, they are slightly problematic. When the valve is halfway down, the air is stopped completely in the instrument. So as a player, one thing you try and achieve is getting real speed through the valve changes so that the air travels smoothly from one note to the next. Now, classical players work very hard to get their fingers fast and accurate, but jazz players have actually used the middle in some ways to create different colours of sound. I'll play you what is a half valve as opposed to a full note. And you can hear the colour change when the valve isn't fully down. As soon as vowels were invented, people tried to find new ways to express themselves. And one of these players who took advantage was a guy called Arban, who wrote an instruction manual for trumpet players, but was also a real virtuoso of his instrument. And it became very fashionable with this new instrument to try and play as fast as possible. I'll play you a little bit of Arban's Carnival of Venice variations on the cornet. In order to start a note cleanly on a trumpet, we use the tongue. And what the tongue does is it stops the air and then it releases the air. And when the air is released, hopefully, you get a nice clean start to the note. If you started a note without the tongue, the note still sounds, but the attack isn't as precise. So the tongue is very useful for getting a nice clean start to the note. One problem is when you get to fast repeated notes, the tongue simply can't move fast enough. That's about as fast as I can single tongue. So what trumpet players have developed is double and triple tonguing. So the t sound or the d sound from the tongue and then a g sound in the throat. And each of these sounds causes the air to stop and then be released, giving you a nice clean start. So we call this double tonguing. And basically, rather than saying we say digga 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 da or ticka ticka ta. And for triple tonguing, for triplets and sextuplets, we use this da digga da digga da. Now, if you get it right through an instrument, you shouldn't really be able to tell whether I'm single tonguing, double tonguing, or triple tonguing. Single, double, and triple. Now, many composers have used this facility that trumpet players, that brass players have. Stravinsky, for example, in the Firebird, has some very fast repeated tongue passages. One of the most fundamental elements of brass playing is breathing, and you really have to have very good breathing and breath control if you're ever going to get on as a brass player. In many ways, it's the quiet, sustained playing that requires the most control and the most technique to achieve. There's a passage, for example, in Verdi's Masked Ball. And one of the problems with breathing is that you run out of breath. Now, I think brass players have developed two ways of dealing with this. Very often you don't want to stop a phrase. Musically, the phrase wants to continue. And to take a breath, you chop the phrase. So sometimes, in the planets, for example, you have to breathe very fast and often. And hopefully, if you can do it often enough and fast enough, you don't really hear where the breaks come. One other thing which brass players and wind players in general have developed is called circular breathing. And circular breathing, what happens then is you catch air in your cheeks, and as you blow the air out of your cheeks, you breathe in through your nose. It's not a technique we often use, but when we do, it's quite useful. Although the B-flat trumpet is able to play in the higher registers of the instrument's range, very often for a classical player, you cannot get quite enough precision, as much precision as you would like. So other instruments I've developed in order to help you. This here is a piccolo trumpet, and it's pitched exactly an octave higher than this trumpet here. And although you can't really play any higher on a piccolo trumpet than you can on a large B-flat trumpet, it does give you a little bit more accuracy in that upper register. I'll play a little bit of Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 2. You could play that phrase, I guess, on a large B-flat trumpet, but I don't think it would sound very good. The notes do come out, but there certainly isn't the same precision on the attacks. The other big issue for brass players, but trumpet players in particular, and particularly when playing in a high register, is how much muscle power you have here in your embouchure. The air pressure is created by the biggest muscle in your body, in your abdominal area, and yet the air is forced through your lips and controlled by two of the smaller muscles in your body either side of your mouth. So trumpet players are generally obsessed with how much strength and power they have in these muscles here, and a lot of your practice as a trumpet player is spent building strength and security in these small muscles here. The other issue, I guess, that trumpet players are slightly obsessed with is the nature, the quality of their lips at any given time. Your lips are your reed. A woodwind instrument has a reed, and woodwind players spend an awful lot of time shaving the wood off their reed in order to get it in optimum condition. A brass player, you can do nothing. Your lips are what they are. And if it's cold in a dead of winter and you find your lips get chapped, you still have to use them, they still have to vibrate. And really, it's a big learning experience as you go through your life as a brass player in working out ways of actually getting your lips to vibrate and getting your muscles here to last long enough to get to the end of a concert.
If you've enjoyed learning about the instruments in the orchestra, why not try our iPad app, The Orchestra, featuring Esa-Pekka Salonen and the Philharmonia Orchestra. Fully interactive video playback lets you view the orchestra from all angles, and the revolutionary beat map shows you who is playing when. Follow along with synchronized scores. Hear the inside scoop in audio commentaries, and get a 360-degree view of all the instruments. Available for download in the App Store on iTunes.